The cargo bay was cold and quiet. Jace walked between the rows of sealed crates, holding a scanner in one hand. He was just doing his routine check before the next supply drop. The ship was running smooth, and everything seemed normalant. The scanner beeped, not just once, but 3 quick times. Jace stopped walking, his eyes narrowing. He scanned the crate again. The readings were strange. Heat signature, heartbeat, and weak movement. It wasn't cargo. It was someone inside. Jace looked around, making sure no one was watching. Then he bent down and carefully pried open the crate lid. The light from above spilled into the box, and inside, curled up and shaking, was a small alien girl. Her skin was pale blue, her silver-white hair matted with dust. Her eyes large and glowing violet, his with fear. She didn't scream, didn't speak, just stared. Jace froze. "What the hell?" He whispered, "Who are you?" The girl didn't answer. Her clothes were torn, like she had been running or hiding for a long time. She looked too young to be a threat. Maybe 12 or 13 in human years, but what was she doing in their cargo crate? Jace tapped his cum, but then stopped. He was about to call security, but something about the way she looked at him made him pause. Her lips moved slightly, just a whisper. "Jace." He staggered back. "What? How do you know my name?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into a small pouch tied around her neck and pulled out a small, broken pendant. It was old, rusted, but familiar. Jace's chest tightened, his mouth dry. That pendant, he had given one just like it too. His wife years ago, before she died, before everything fell apart. His mind raced. This had to be a trick, a mistake, a hallucination. But then the girl whispered again, "You left me behind." Jace felt the weight of those words hit him like a punch. This couldn't be happening. He scanned the crate again, double-checked the readings. It was real, not a dream. He reached into the crate, slowly, gently. The girl didn't pull away. He helped her out and wrapped his jacket around her shoulders. She was cold, too cold. Footsteps echoed nearby. A crew member was coming down the corridor toward the bay. If they saw the girl, they'd report her, and she'd be taken away immediately. No questions, no mercy. "Come on," Jace whispered, lifting her in his arms. She was lighter than expected. Fragile, he moved quickly, slipping through a side door and into the lower maintenance tunnels. No one ever went there unless something was broken. He took her to his quarters, locked the door, and lowered her gently onto the bed. She lay there quietly, watching him, still not speaking much, still shaking. Jace sat on the edge of the bed, his hands trembling. "Who are you?" he asked again, his voice soft now. "Tell me the truth." The girl looked at him for a long time. Then she whispered, "I came to find you, Papa." The word hit him like thunder. He stood up fast, knocking over the chair. No, that's not possible. My wife? She didn't." The girl closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. "She lived. She escaped. She gave birth to me. But she couldn't come back. She was too weak." Jace felt like the floor had vanished from under him. Everything he believed, everything he accepted, it all shifted in one moment. His wife was dead, wasn't she? And if this girl was telling the truth, he opened his medkit, pulled out a handheld DNA scanner. "Lie still," he said quietly. The girl didn't resist. The scanner buzzed softly as it read her sample. Jace stared at the screen as the results loaded. He could feel his heart pounding, sweat running down his back. It beeped, and what he saw made him forget to breathe. Jace stared at the scanner in silence, the beeping sound still echoing in his ears. He had expected an error, a mismatch, anything but this. But the screen clearly showed at 48% DNA match. The alien girl lying on his bed was biologically related to him. His blood ran through Her veins, the girl watched his face. Her violet eyes filled with something he couldn't name. Fear, hope, pain, or maybe all of it together. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The truth was in the numbers, and they didn't lie. Jace stepped back. Like his own body had betrayed him, his knees felt weak, his hands shook. He remembered his wife's last words before she was taken. No matter what happens, protect the baby. But there was no baby. Not when they found the wreckage. Not when they held the small funeral. He had mourned her for years. He had buried the future they were supposed to have. And now, here she was. Not a memory, not a dream, but a living soul. His daughter. He sat down slowly, unable to tear his eyes away from her. "You're really mine?" He asked in a whisper. The girl nodded, her small hands gripping the edge of the blanket. "I don't remember her face," she said. "Only her voice, only her stories." "What stories?" Jace asked, afraid of the answer. "She told me about Earth, about you, about the stars you promised her. She said you were brave, but lost." Jace closed his eyes for a moment. The weight of guilt sinking deep. He hadn't been brave. He had given up. He never searched long enough. Never asked the right questions. A sudden knock on his door snapped him back to the moment. "Crew inspection," a voice called from the hallway. Jace looked at the girl, panic in his chest. He had no time. He grabbed a storage panel behind his bed and quickly opened it. "Get in," he whispered. "Don't make a sound." The girl nodded without protest and climbed inside, curling up. Quietly, he closed the panel just as the door opened. 2 crew members stepped in, armed, serious. "There's been a breach in the cargo logs," one said. "We think someone smuggled a life form aboard." Jace forced himself to stay calm. "Cargo's clean. I checked it myself," he said, standing straight. "You know the rules, Jace," the other said, scanning the room, no exceptions. They walked around, looked under the table, inside the closet. One of them paused near the bed. Just inches from the hidden panel, Jace held his breath, his hand resting on the grip of his hidden stun tool. But after a few seconds, they moved on. "If we find out you're hiding something," the first said, "you'll lose your ship pass and your station rank." Jace nodded, understood. They left without another word. Jace waited 10 full seconds before opening the panel. The girl crawled out slowly, blinking at the light. "I heard them," she whispered. "They would have taken me." "Yes," Jace replied. "They would have." He sat on the floor, his back against the wall. She joined him, silent for a moment. Then she asked, "Are you going to give me away too?" Jace didn't answer right away. He looked at her again, really looked. Her eyes were like her mother's, her voice soft like his. She wasn't a stranger anymore. "No," he finally said. "Not now, not ever." He reached out and took her hand. It was small, warm, trembling. But she didn't pull away. In that quiet moment, a broken family began to stitch itself together again. But neither of them saw the blinking red light outside the room. A hidden scanner had detected unauthorized DNA, and someone on the crew had already seen the results. Trouble was coming. And Jace had only just begun to understand how far he would have to go to keep his daughter safe. The red light on the outer hallway wall flickered once, then vanished. Jace didn't notice it. He was too busy watching the girl eat a protein bar like she hadn't had food in days. Her hands shook as she unwrapped it, but she never looked away from him. Not once. She had questions. He could see it in her eyes. But so did he. Too many questions, not enough answers. How did she get on the ship? Who helped her? And most of all, how had his wife survived when he thought she was gone forever? Jace stood and grabbed the small portable med scanner again. One DNA scan wasn't enough for him. He had to be sure, completely sure. He tapped into the deeper profile access one only senior crew had clearance for. The girl flinched when the scanner touched her wrist again. "It's okay," he said. Just one more scan. She gave a small nod and stayed still, her eyes darting toward the door. She didn't trust this place. And honestly, neither did he anymore. The scan finished and showed more than before. Perfect breakdown of her ancestry. Blood markers, even memories locked in genetic codes. Jace stared at the data in disbelief. Her mother was listed Yelani, his wife, a name he hadn't spoken aloud in years. But the strangest part wasn't just the match. It was the date of birth. The girl was exactly 10 years old. The same time Jace had received that last broken transmission, the one they said was fake, an error in the logs. It hadn't been fake. It had been a message he ignored. He dropped the scanner and backed away slowly. Guilt poured over him like acid. She could have died, alone, cold, in some forgotten place, and he'd moved on with his job, his missions, his silence. The girl picked up the scanner and handed it to him carefully. "You were trying to forget," she said quietly, "but I never forgot you." Jace's throat tightened. He knelt beside her and wrapped his arms around her. Not knowing what else to do, she didn't cry, but her fingers clutched the back of his shirt with desperate strength. Outside the door, another crew member paused, staring at his own scanner. He had received the DNA alert, illegal blood match. The message said, unauthorized biological subject. He tapped his cum quietly. "Commander, you need to see this." Back in the room, Jace was already planning. They couldn't stay here, not for long. The girl's arrival was too mysterious. Her presence too dangerous. Someone had to know she was aboard. And someone would want her gone. "I need to know everything," Jace said. Pulling out a small recorder, she looked unsure, but then nodded. "My mother was taken by slavers," she began slowly. "She escaped, but she was sick. Very sick." Jace felt a chill run down his spine. "She hid me in a refugee transport. Told me to find a man named Jace on a ship called the Vanguard Eclipse." Jace blinked. That was the name of his previous ship, the one he left 5 years ago. "You were never supposed to end up here," he muttered. She shook her head. "No, I was redirected. Someone told me to wait in the cargo." "And then you opened the crate." Jace narrowed his eyes. This wasn't random. Someone had known he was here. Someone had helped her reach him, but who and why? A sudden sound interrupted his thoughts. The hallway speaker crackled. "All crew, report to command deck for security briefing," said the captain's voice, sharp and urgent. Jace's stomach turned. He grabbed his sidearm and handed a small emergency transmitter to the girl. "If anything happens, press this and hide," he said. She looked at the device, then at him. "Are you leaving me?" "Just for a few minutes," he said. "But I'll come back, no matter what." He opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Just as the silent alarm finished syncing his DNA to a list now labeled Potential Threat, *, Jace walked through the corridors like a ghost. His mind was racing, but his face showed nothing. To the rest of the crew, he was just another officer answering the captain's call. But inside, he was building a storm. Every step felt heavier than the last. The ship's atmosphere had changed. People were whispering, watching each other too closely. Something had leaked. Or maybe someone had spoken. The walls themselves felt tense, like they were listening. The doors to the command deck opened with a hiss. Half the crew had already gathered, standing in stiff silence. The captain stood in front, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Jace stepped in, calm but alert. "We've received a flagged anomaly," the captain said, voice cold. "Unauthorized genetic material was detected on this vessel." No one moved. But the room somehow became colder. The captain tapped a screen and turned it around, a red highlighted DNA report blinked on the display. Jace kept his body still, but his pulse was thunder. He knew that report. He had scanned the girl in private, but someone else had tapped the system. Or worse, someone had expected this from the start. This Vessel follows strict immigration and quarantine protocols. The captain continued. Any living organism without record or clearance will be handed over to border enforcement. Some crew members nodded, others looked uneasy. The captain's voice dropped lower. There is a traitor among us, hiding this threat, Jace felt. Every eye in the room shifted slightly toward him. 1 second of silence, then another. Then a voice from the back, check his logs. Someone said, check Jace's quarters. He didn't look to see who spoke. Didn't need to. They were closing in faster than he thought. But he couldn't fight here. Not yet. Not without putting her in danger. The captain gave a nod to the security officers, escort engineer Jace to his quarters. He said, we'll take a look together. Jace smiled softly, even though his fists were tight. Of course, Captain, he replied. Lead the way. They walked through the halls in silence, the 2 guards behind him, tense and alert. Jace noticed every camera, every sensor, every emergency panel along the walls. He'd walked these paths for years, knew their systems, but now they felt like a cage when they reached his quarters. The captain entered first. He scanned the room quickly, his eyes locking on the wall panel near the bed. Jace's heart skipped. The hiding space was still sealed. But for how long? Open it, the captain said without looking back. Jace stepped forward slowly. He had 2 choices, stall or strike, and stalling was done just before he could move. A soft sound came from the panel, a quiet click. Then the panel opened on its own. But there was no one inside, just an empty blanket and a blinking red emergency beacon activated. Jace froze, then smiled. She had used the transmitter, like he told her. She was already gone, hidden, smart. The captain stared at the empty compartment. Where is she? He demanded. Jace turned and looked him dead in the eyes. I don't know, he lied. But if I were you, I'd start worrying about who helped her. The captain's face twisted with fury. Take him to holding, he barked. The guard stepped forward. Weapons raised, but Jace didn't resist. He raised his hand slowly and let them cuff him. He had bought her time, and that was all that mattered. As they led him away, Jace glanced up at the ceiling. He knew the girl was watching from the vents. He whispered in his mind, run far. Stay hidden. I'll come for you. She was no longer just a passenger. She was his mission now, his daughter. The holding cell was cold, darker than Jace remembered. He sat on the metal bench, arms locked behind him, head resting against the wall. The silence pressed in from all sides, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engine. It wasn't fear. He felt it was fury, not for being locked up, but for failing to protect her completely. Somewhere above him, she was alone, running through air ducts and forgotten crawl spaces. She had activated the transmitter, escaped before they opened the panel. Smart, fast, and quiet. Just like her mother, Jace closed his eyes, trying to remember every hidden passage the girl might use. She had grown up without comfort, without a home, but she had instincts. She had survived this long, and she wasn't going to stop now. Footsteps echoed outside the cell. Heavy boots, not 1 pair, 3. Maybe 4. Then the door opened, and a man stepped in. Commander Halrek, head of external security, not part of the regular crew, and not someone Jace trusted. Where is she? Halrek asked with no emotion. Jace didn't answer. Halrek stepped closer and activated a small holodisplay, showing a map of the ship. Your daughter triggered 6 thermal sensors in the upper levels. He said, she's clever, but not invisible. Jace kept his face blank. She's just a scared child, Halrek continued, but the council doesn't care. She's unregistered, half-human, and her kind carries unstable genetics. Jace looked up sharply. That's a lie, he said. There's no such evidence, Halrek smirked. We don't need evidence, we just need fear. He leaned closer. Voice colder now. We'll find her, with or without your help. Jace clenched his jaw, the cuffs digging into his skin. He had to get out now. But before Halrek could say more, the door alarm blared. Attention. A voice shouted from the comm, unauthorized access in the engine core. Someone's trying to overload the fusion flow. Halrek turned sharply, eyes wide. What the hell? He rushed out of the cell, shouting orders, the other guards following him in chaos. Jace smiled slowly. That wasn't a real overload, was a trick, a diversion, and he knew who caused it moments later. The emergency power cut the lock. The door slid open just enough, and a small hand reached through the gap. Jace stood, slipping through the opening. She was there, covered in grime, her face flushed, breathing fast. "I saw them taking you," she whispered. "So I used your distraction." Code Jace couldn't help but grin. "You used the fusion loop decoy." "You're a genius." She grabbed his hand, pulling him toward a narrow maintenance shaft. "We don't have much time," she said. "They sealed most of the escape routes, but I found one." They moved quickly, crawling through tight metal. Passages lit only by her wrist light. She had memorized paths most crew didn't even know existed. Jace followed her into the gravity shaft that ran behind the coolant lines. It was hot, dangerous, but unguarded. "Where are we going?" he asked. She looked back, her eyes glowing with determination. "To the hangar," she said. "We're stealing a ship." Jace blinked. She was serious. And honestly, he was proud. But the hangar would be guarded, locked down, possibly even booby-trapped. "Do you know how to fly?" he asked, only half joking. She nodded. "Mom taught me before she got sick. I can do it." They reached the last hatch, just above the hangar bay floor. Below, two guards paced near a small scout vessel. Jace looked at her and whispered, "We have one chance." The girl held her breath, eyes locked on the guards. "Then let's make it count," she said, and with that, the daughter he never knew he had, and the man who had once given up on family, dropped into the fire together. They hit the hangar floor like shadows. Low and silent, Jace rolled behind a fuel cart, pulling the girl close beside him. The two guards were still pacing. Unaware that danger had dropped from above, Jace studied the patrol pattern, counting the seconds between each turn. It was tight, but not impossible. The girl leaned close, whispering, "If we get to the scout ship, I can unlock the console." Jace glanced at her wrist, where a makeshift patch lit up with faint blue codes. "You've already hacked it?" he asked, eyebrows raised. She gave a proud little nod. "I had to practice while hiding." He almost laughed, but didn't. There wasn't time. Instead, he motioned for her to stay low and wait. He would create the distraction. She would run. He grabbed a nearby plasma torch and hurled it across the hangar. It clanged against the far wall, lighting up in a burst of sparks. Both guards turned immediately, weapons drawn, shouting into their comms. The girl didn't hesitate. She sprinted for the ship, her feet light, movements smooth and fast. Jace followed a second later, taking a longer path through the shadows. The hangar alarm began to blare. Backup would arrive in less than a minute. By the time he reached the ship's hatch, the door was already open. She was in the pilot seat, fingers flying across the glowing controls. Jace jumped in and slammed the hatch shut behind him. "I've disabled the external clamps," she said quickly. "We can launch in 20 seconds. "Good," Jace said, gripping the co-pilot's chair. "Make it 10. The engines hummed to life. Outside, guards began to shoot, but the ship's shield flickered on. A few bullets pinged off harmlessly, but the countdown had begun. 5 seconds. Jace saw Halrek enter the hangar, his face red with fury. He shouted something, but no one could hear him anymore. 2 seconds. The floor panels lit up, warning lights flashing. The blast doors tried to close. 0. The scout ship roared forward, shooting out of the hangar like a bullet through fire. They broke free of the station's docking ring, alarms still howling behind them. Then the stars opened wide around them. Jace looked back at the shrinking station, then at the girl beside him. She was shaking. Not from fear, but from everything. Years of running, hiding, surviving, all crashing down in one breath. He reached out and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said. "You got us out." She gave a weak smile. "But they'll come after us," she whispered. Jace nodded. "They will." She turned her eyes to the screen, then tapped into the nav system. "I still have something to show you," she said. A blinking point appeared, coordinates, deep in an unregistered sector. "This is where she is," the girl said quietly. "Mom sent me here, but she stayed behind." Jace felt the air leave his lungs. He leaned closer to the console, reading the signal data embedded in the file. It wasn't just coordinates. It was a personal code, Yelani's code. He looked at the girl, then at the stars ahead. "We're going to get her," he said, "no matter what's waiting." The girl nodded. Her voice barely a whisper. "She always said you'd find us, even if it took years." Outside the window, the stars shimmered like fireflies scattered across a black ocean. Jace set the course, tightened the ship's shielding, and hit the engines. They vanished into the void. Two fugitives, one bloodline, and a hope burning brighter than any star behind them. The ship drifted through the rift like a ghost, beyond the last beacon, past charted space. They crossed into forgotten stars. Radiation storms flickered in the distance, and static danced across the screen, but the signal was still strong, guiding them deeper. Jace hadn't slept in a day, neither had the girl. They took turns watching the scanners, adjusting the shields and scanning the void. Both were quiet, but not in fear. They were listening, waiting, hoping. Suddenly, the proximity alarm chirped, low and steady. The ship came into view, broken station wrapped in debris, half dead, half lit. It floated like a skeleton, cracked and silent. But a pulse still blinked from within. The girl leaned forward, her hands trembling on the console. "That's it," she whispered. "She's in there." Jace slowed the ship, scanning for life signs. One signature appeared weak, but alive. Human-alien hybrid, female, age range. Consistent with Yelani, he guided the ship into the outer dock, manually overriding each failing hatch. They both put on oxygen seals and stepped into the cold, rotting structure. The walls were stained, the lights flickering, but someone had been surviving here barely. They passed through narrow corridors, stepping over collapsed beams and broken panels. At the far end of the medical bay, a door stood open and a faint sound came through. A voice, soft and hoarse, repeating one phrase over and over. "Stay strong, little star. Stay strong." The girl pushed forward, faster than Jace could stop her. She ran into the room, and for a moment everything stopped. Yelani lay on a rusted cot, thinner than memory. Her skin pale and cracked, her eyes opened slowly, and when she saw the girl, her lips parted in disbelief. "You made it," she breathed. "You really made it." The girl collapsed into her arms, sobbing like a child. And for the first time, Jace saw her break, not out of fear, but because the pain was over. He stepped into the room, unsure, afraid. Yelani looked at him, and a tear slid down her cheek. "You came," she said. "After all this time, you came." He knelt beside her, unable to speak. He took her hand, thin and shaking, and pressed it to his forehead. "I should have found you sooner," he whispered. "But you did find us," she replied. "That's all that matters now." They stayed like that for a long time. No words, no questions, just warmth. 3 lives once scattered across the stars, now together again in the ruins of silence. When Jace finally helped her stand, the girl supported one side and he took the other. They walked out of the dying station together, step by step. Behind them, the shadows of loss remained. But ahead stars waited, and this time they would face them as a family. The universe had tried to keep them apart, but it failed, because sometimes, even across galaxies, blood remembers.